Hi everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to my room, guys. I hope you're well today. Today we're going to talk some more about NI rambling, particularly in INFJs, but NI rambling in general, the uses and abuses of this concept or of this activity, full stop. It's often used as a, obviously when you say that somebody is rambling, usually that's a critique, and I'm not denying that it could be construed as a critique, but again, this is also echoing a video that I made very recently, right, about this topic. There is a strong sense in which rambling is very close to the core of INFJ identity, and it ought not to be something that you feel ashamed of or something that you feel like you ought to repress at all times. In fact, there is a sense in which if you allow yourself to ramble, you also allow yourself to get closer to your full potential as an INFJ. Now, that may sound paradoxical, but if you want to hear more about my argument for it, stick around. Keeping in mind that I have released a book on the INFJ very recently, almost a month ago by now, The Infinite Soul. So, INFJ Life in the Modern World. It comes as a sequel to the Ecstatic Soul. It's I like conjuring up books from thin air, but this book, The Ecstatic Soul, a man on the cover looks at the makeup of the INFJ consciousness, INFJ psyche, whereas The Infinite Soul looks at INFJ in the modern world, in the contemporary epoch, how to lead fulfilling, rich, existentially meaningful lives. So get those two books if you want to hear more about this. And importantly, I don't emphasize it enough, leave a positive review. If you enjoyed the book, please leave a review on Amazon. It really helps with the referencing, in the same way that if you leave a thumbs up to this video, it helps with the referencing of this video, and this is pretty much for free for you. I also have a Patreon page which you can link down there if you want to have more direct interactions with me. That's a useful way of doing that, and of course supports my work. So just to come back to this notion of rambling, you have to understand that if we agree that the mindscape of an INFJ is a holistic whole, that is kind of redundant, but you know what I mean. There's something very holistic in the INFJ mind. It's every part relates to every other part, and it makes sense as in a circle. You can be at one particular location and reach across to another location. It all has to make sense together, right? Which again is very different from a more aggregative framework what you would see in high NE users or medium NE users, where the NE user has the possibility to take any extra bit of information and make it part of their network of beliefs or knowledge claims, regardless of whether these might actually come into conflict with another belief or knowledge claim somewhere else in their mindscape. NE has this ability to not be too discriminatory in terms of what it allows in. It can do the sorting out and the filtering later on, right? Via the use of TI, for example, or the use of FI. It's not something that NI, particularly when NI is high up in your stack, it's not something that NI is very good at. NI tends to only aggregate information that it can already make sense of according to the loose formula that is governing the holism of their mind in the first place at any particular moment. So it means that for an INFJ, for instance, or an NI dominant to take in new bits of information, in some sense to retain that information, it can be a little trickier. It's not something that they can as flexibly and smoothly just take in and start talking about, like you see with the amazing flexibility and rapid fire delivery of high NE users sometimes. It's not something I can do because, if you like, the vetting process is much more rigorous. However, if a particular piece, a belief or a knowledge claim or something else makes it through, makes it past the vetting process, then it's there to stay. It's there to stay, and it builds up the NI framework, which sometimes people like to call a vision, but it can be called many things. So you have this big circular mass that you're always carrying with you at all times. And it tends to be made dynamic and activated by archetypes, the archetypes of the collective unconscious, in keeping with Jung's description of NI. So the archetypes are always at work in a semi-subterranean manner as well. But the relationship that INFJs have to the outside world is always going to be mediated by this quite rigorous vetting process in terms of what they let inside their mindscape or not. What they do not let in tends to sort of be, you know, like it sort of bounces off and it disappears. Which is why, by the way, it's very much not infrequent for an INFJ to be told they have a selective memory. You know, because it's true, they select. Because what you don't focus on, what you don't accept into your mindscape, you're not going to give it enough attention in order to remember it, because memory and attention are obviously highly correlated concepts. Okay, what's the connection of all this with rambling? You know, another word that I think can be usefully put forward here is ruminating. You know, rambling, ruminating. High NI users tend to do that. In fact, if you think about it, there's a reason for that. It's because if you're a high NI user, you're someone who has this holistic mindscape that evolves slowly over time, has all the parts connecting to all the other parts, right? And you can circularly move from one part to the next part. So in a sense, this holistic world is a world that you can relate to as a world. It's not like an assemblage of wholly disparate elements like you would see with an NE user. And a high NE user, a lot less likely to ramble, a lot less likely to ruminate, because they don't really have a narrative. The narrative is constantly being refreshed from moment to moment, or at least from day to day or week to week, very spontaneously, very enthusiastically all the time, very flexibly, like I've said before. Whereas in the case of high NI users like INFJs, what you get is something that is, because it is more ponderous in some way and less susceptible to quick change and evolution, really, and connects the parts all together holistically. Well, that creates very easily a relationship between that and an articulation and language in the form of a narrative, which requires holistic form, coherence between all the different points. So you almost get the kind of, at the background of the INFJ mind and the INTJ mind as well, you get a kind of like narrative that just unfolds. But it's not a narrative that unfolds, if you like, and is every day different, and it constantly gets punctuated by new episodes and is kind of jagged as a result. No, it's always the same narrative that repeats itself, the eternal return of the same, in the words of highly intuitive, insightful, NI-dominant Friedrich Nietzsche, right? The eternal return of the same narrative that gets little pieces, little bits and pieces come in, very few come out, and it just evolves like this big thing, you know, day after day. Well, this narrative that is in your mind, if it is brought to language, comes out as ramble, comes out as rumination, because it's, if you like, in a sense, a rambling, or the ruminating aspect that we're talking about here, is the tendency to be unable to resist, once you've said something, not to say the next thing, right? You say something or you say another thing, you always have the next thing in mind, and then the next thing that you said, automatically you have the next bit. That's the circular INFJ mind translated into speech, translated into language. The fact that this narrative exists means that if you say a sentence or a couple sentences, make a point or write a paragraph, you instantly get to the front of your mind in a way that is impossible to resist. Really, so compelling it is. Just the next part of the story that's already been playing in your mind every day or every week or for every past few years. That's the narrative of the INFJ mind that is just, again, brought to speech, brought to words. That's the rambling. That's why it's difficult for an INFJ not to ramble. That's also why repressing the rambling for an INFJ is kind of negating their essence, because that's completely connected, and if you like, it's completely linked up with NI phenomenology, how NI manifests itself in the world. It's also why INFJs can be great writers, can be very consistent moral articulators and educators, is because they have great consistency. One episode connected to the next episode, connected to the next episode, and then bringing it back to the first episode. It's always like that. That can be very fruitful from a literary point of view, from a philosophical point of view, from a historical point of view. A lot of INFJs who are historians tend to be circular historians. You know, things come back, you know, like the eternal return. It's like a circular movement. There is a particular epoch succeeded by another one, and then it gets back to the first one. You see that a lot in INFJ historians too, and that's because it's always, at all times, a reflection of the INFJ mind or the INTJ mind, because again, it happens with INTJs. And if you look at Nietzsche, who's, I think, is INFJ, which most people would say INTJ, or someone like Hegel or someone like Marx, you get the exact same phenomenon, right? So just always remember, if there is that rambling or if there is ruminating, this is in fact a reflection of the workings of the INFJ mind or the INTJ mind, relatively unhindered, which for creative expression, sometimes not being hindered is the best to come up with new insights. And it's doing its work. That's how it's auto-generative in a sense, right? And it's not a sign that the INFJ is not functioning well. It's a sign that the INFJ is letting NI speak without too many interferences from other functions. And again, at least for some parts of the day or some parts of the week, if you want your creative juices to be replenished all the time, this is something that is very good practice. So never be ashamed of rambling. This is just a manifestation of your inner nature. Okay, well, let me know in the comments what you thought, guys, if you agree or not, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.